Some of you know Breaking Ground through our grants programs here at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. But Breaking Ground is a much larger campus-wide conversation and movement of UMBC students, staff, and faculty to engage our studies in our work, to build and strengthen our society more broadly, to connect to each other, and to solve real problems, both on our campus and in our surrounding community. I'm Joby Taylor from the Shriver Center at UMBC, where we've been doing this applied and engaged work for 20 years now. Through my work with a number of programs on campus, I've had the chance to work with some of the most interesting people and projects. One of those programs is our Interdisciplinary Studies program that allows undergraduate students to bring together a collection of academic disciplines to design their own academic major that's problem-based. So our next guest is Jack Neumeier, who is in his junior year in his Interdisciplinary Studies program here at UMBC. And his is an Interdisciplinary Studies major who is designing his own academic major. In this case, an academic program that's focused on public health and health policy, where that intersects with ideas of organizational change and community organizing, community building. And Jack, like our other guests today, has one of the focuses of his work is around the growing food movement on our campus and off. Jack really epitomizes for me the intrinsically motivated, engaged student who really is trying to combine his desire to create social change, but also especially to engage others along with him in that process so that it's not a solitary effort. So Jack, I'll welcome you to the program and tell us about the Garden Project.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Garden, in the most simple terms, is a community garden that we're building on campus. But really, and we've had people talk about food already, so there are all these things about food that the Garden wants to get at. How do we transform our entire system of food? How do we get closer to our food? The idea that if I bought a banana from the grocery store, I'm really not buying it for the real price. I don't really know what it cost to grow that food, and so how can I ever care really about it? So those things are really important. But we come at it as students, a lot of which, most of us actually, really weren't aware of this food thing, which is weird to say that you're not aware of food, but we weren't. We weren't
Right.
aware of all the issues behind food when we came to this project. Really, it was, we all wanted to create change. We didn't just want to maintain or plan an event, and continue to do that. We wanted to find something new, and we had to come to it. So as far as the Garden, it's really this idea of how do we create a built space? And for us, this is an idea of how do we create something that we can point to that will, in its existence, kind of represent all of these very abstract concepts. Breaking Ground being one of them. Breaking Ground's a very abstract concept. I remember David Hoffman, the first time I got the full lowdown on Breaking Ground. It was like 3.5, 4 hours. And we don't have 4 hours to talk to everyone. So the idea was, how do we create something that will represent the unique nature of higher education at UMBC, including Breaking Ground, and something that we can just point at and say, this is what we're talking about. And then when someone looks at it, they'll see all the activity, all of the connections, all the relationships that are grown, in addition to food, and they'll understand and internalize those values in a way that we couldn't do by talking to them about it.
Oh,
Right.
That's fascinating. And I know it's not really just about food, but I want to stay on this for just a second because as you were speaking, it brought home for me the fact that for many of us, our college experience are years where we might eat very well, but we really have no control over our food. And so here's an interesting project where among the other intentions that you've are already voicing, there is kind of this space to kind of think about that as well.
Absolutely. So this meditation on the worth of food. It's funny. So as students, like most American universities, we come in and we have to buy this meal plan, and it's kind of given to us. And so something we're doing right now through Jill's class is working with our local campus dining service and saying, can we audit where you get your food from? And can we be more involved in that process and kind of find out what students actually want? And maybe students want a lot more local, sustainable, and those kind of foods, and like real food. I hear all the time, if there's one thing that UMBC students can kind of collectively say, it's that we don't like the food in dining hall, right? This is a thing that like we all galvanize behind, and we don't really, a lot of people don't know what they mean when they say that, I don't think. I think what they're really saying is, I wish I could have real food. But it's people. I'm not sure that's the kind of terminology that we all share all the time.
That's interesting. You're saying, in a sense, like pay no attention to that man behind the curtain,
right?
You know, because it's just what is in the buffet line.
Yeah.
But so it is a way of kind of thinking more deeply about these systems, which is fascinating, and connecting it to coursework. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the program that you're building and interdisciplinary studies. How does that work, and how are you trying to pull together an academic program that will let you lead a project like this as something that you're also integrating into your studies?
Yeah, so for the garden, there are a couple of central assertions. The first is that we believe universities, especially public universities, but really all institutions of higher education, have an institutional obligation to a community, to a place, because universities don't go anywhere. And because it's the most fertile ground for creativity and for young people to do things, we, through the process of getting our degrees, should be creating social value. That should be innate to the proposition of getting a degree. And it's not. It's kind of implicit in some places. Some people do it, some people don't. But it's the kind of thing you kind of get up for or you don't. We think all should be doing it innate to their process. So the garden really, through our connections with classes across departments and all that stuff, is trying to show what that model could look like. And that leads to the second thing, which is for students that want to create change, you're going to graduate at some point. And how do you make that change outlast your time at the university, right? That's hard to know. And so something we've been trying to do is, how do students lead and then kind of disperse what they've gained so that there's all this connective tissue that supports whatever change they created. And so that means the innovative partnerships with classes, with scholarship programs, with academic departments, with community partners, everyone, creating all of the stakeholders. And food was the easiest way to do that, really, because we all have to eat. It's implicit, it's transcendent upon, everyone cares about it at some level, and we all have a place at the table is the point.
Right.
So that's why food was so easy.
Yeah, and in some ways that will always be there, but it will be at different stages as it moves ahead. So tell us where it is now. You have plans, or you've moved a proposal forward.
Right.
Where's the garden at, and where's it heading?
So through our process, it's trying to figure out how do we create real interdisciplinary work. So I just came into the INDS department very, very recently. And I felt like that was a truer way to find what I cared about, because it was in reaction to what I was doing. I think a lot of people come into college and they kind of decide a major and they take what the major is giving them as far as the credits and the classes they have to take, and then they just kind of work with it within that framework. But I think that's really rigid. And I'm not really sure that's a reflection of what people want to be doing all the time. And so for me, INDS was a way of, how do we create, but also how do we seek to understand? Like the Da Vinci quote of studying the art of science and the science of art. Developing your senses, especially learning how to see, realizing that everything connects to everything else. Like that was cool to me. And if I could do it around health, then that would be cool too, because that's where change can happen. So as far as the project, it's figuring out, how do we actually blend disciplines? Not just like putting people, a mechanical engineering student and a visual arts graphic design student in the same room. It's not just that. It's how do we take their methodologies. So like design a garden, for example, right? Right, exactly. So that's something we're doing now. One of our teams is named Artists and Engineers, because the idea is that engineers think about what's possible, and artists think about what's possible, what could be. Right. And that's an interesting dynamic. So those are two groups that have different methodologies, different principles, that all stem from a very different philosophy about what should be. And so how can we actually create meaningful interaction that blends those things, not just puts them in the same room? And we're trying to do that around every aspect of building a space, organizing all the activity around that space, and then engaging everyone in it in ways that are beyond this kind of volunteerism thing. The third assertion is this idea that service doesn't have to be at a service site. Like I don't have to go to a soup kitchen and volunteer to do service. That's great. But it can happen at a college campus. And that students can create those opportunities. The same thing as with research. UMBC is a great undergraduate research university. Research doesn't have to happen in a lab necessarily, although that's probably what I thought of when I think of research.
Right.
But it doesn't have to. And students can create those opportunities. So that's the third assertion, that students are particularly suited to finding innovative ways to create opportunities for service and for research. And the garden, we hope, can be a model for that as well. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're still planning, raising money. We've raised $15,000 so far, which covers our construction costs. That's great. But we're always looking for how can we engage every single layer of the university, which is an iterative process. And we'll be breaking ground at the beginning of summer, presumably. And we have about 8,500 square feet to work with right now. And presumably, if that succeeds and people engage in the work, then it can only grow. So it's fantastic.
And what it produces, I'm sure, will it be rolled back? I mean, students will be deciding this, right?
Yeah.
Where what it produces rolls back into.
So the idea is that at a lot of other places, community gardens, there's this idea that students can't really, like, students can do cool things, but maybe we don't want to rely on them to do something because students are flaky and they're young. I mean, I'm super flaky and we have to go to, I have a final this week, that whole thing. But student organizations are the ones that are going to maintain most of the space, or at least a good portion of the space in conjunction with other groups. And that's the point, that we teach people how to grow food and they make those decisions for themselves. And what they do with the food, if they decide to donate it, that's great. But if they don't, we want to understand why they make the decisions they do and to respect that decision.
Yeah, this is really interesting, Jack, because you're, I mean, in some ways you're saying you personally have gone kind of an interdisciplinary studies route, but you're kind of arguing that a direction in kind of education in general should be towards interdisciplinary, like people really blending ideas together. And so you're pulling people from different specific disciplines together as an organic way of that happening. But this other idea of place, just because a college campus might be a temporary place for students, it doesn't mean that it's a meaningless place in terms of the work that should and can be done there. So it's a very philosophical kind of point about how to be engaged in work, even though you may not be there permanently, but it's a part of a kind of an organic movement. It seems like it does translate to kind of the mobility we have in society, even, right? Can I not get involved in my community just because I might not live here the rest of my life? These are my real conversation here, but I think it's a fascinating, really student-led movement that this is creating. So, do you have advice for students about how to make the most of their college years other than becoming interdisciplinary studies major?
No, so everyone should become an INDS major because you can still do whatever it is that you were going to do, but now your major sounds cooler and it's longer and you can defend it and all that cool stuff. But outside of that, actually, I think that gets at the point though. For me, people have to, especially if you're young like me, somewhat young, how do you understand yourself better? And for a lot of people, it's through doing. So if I go out and do stuff, then I'll reflect and then I'll understand myself better. Oh, okay, that's what I care about or whatever. And for others, it's first thinking about what they care about and then proceeding and manifesting that. And that's great. But I think it's really important to first understand, what is it? How do I take in information? How do I make decisions already? What do I know about myself already? What am I best at? And I want to get better at that. Also, what am I terrible at so I can just round it off so it's not so egregious that people won't take me in for what I'm good at. And I don't think we have to be good at everything. We just have to be good enough at the things that we're bad at so that our really good, the things that we're great at can shine through and we can actually contribute to something. So I think it's less about the content, because I think a lot of students get wrapped up in, like, I'm a bio student or whatever. But what I think that can be really similar to being like an econ student. What they're really getting at is, as a student, do I care about the nature of the work? Do I care about what the work can contribute to? If I care about both of those things, then I'm going to love it. If I don't care about both of those things, I'm probably not going to love it. Either I'm going to be bored while I'm doing the work, or it's going to be draining, or I like doing the work, but I don't really feel like I'm contributing to something that I care about. And if those two things are fulfilled, then you're good to go. It doesn't really matter what's going to happen, because you're going to be happy. You can get really good at something if it never makes you tired, because you're just going to keep doing it. But it's so hard to get good at something that drains you, because you're just constantly fighting it.
So. That old adage, I never worked a day in my life.
Right, and that's
never
true.
Thought of his work. Well, thank you for all that you're doing, and I really do think that what you're doing in a movement that really has been happening on UMBC's campus is this sense that students matter and that you can do real work while you're here. And real work, not just in the sense of a side job paying for your education, but there are things to be done wherever we place ourselves. So thank you, and look forward to being in the garden.
Thank you so much.
Okay.